this case is not about Emmanuel Sampson. This case is about the terrible damage that he inflicted to the members of the Burnett Chapel Church of Christ on September 24th of 2017.
It's now all up to the jury.
Yeah, deliberations began but just ended for the day after 4 days of witness testimony and some shocking evidence. Good evening, everyone. Tempers flared today in the trial for Emmanuel Sampson over just what the jury was allowed to hear.
Sampson is facing 43 charges for an attack that killed a mother and injured several church members at the Antioch church. News Channel 5's Matthew Torres was in court when new jail calls by Sampson showed a side of the accused not seen before in court. Matthew.
But first, Vicki, we just learned moments ago that the jury has ended for today and will continue their deliberation starting tomorrow morning. They did hear the closing argument from prosecution, who says that Emmanuel Sampson's actions that day were planned out and was not a result of being suicidal or depressed. Now, they also argued that he remembered more than what he actually said compared to what he testified yesterday after hearing jailhouse phone calls this morning. In one of those calls, Sampson talked about the moment after he was shot.
Hey, when I was on the foot, bro, like, I was acting on front, bro. Nah, when I stood foot on my chest and I let it down, I was on the floor and I couldn't hit it. I didn't know about that. Some people were saying it's funny, bro. And I was like, bro, my was here, y'all like, bro.
Now listen to this story. So the pastor was on the news and like, I told my wife, he killed me, honey. He shot me and I'm dying. I was like, it's yours. Yeah, reading what his quote was. I'm thinking like, get this guy off the stage. Somebody please get this guy off the stage.
This was a part of a call made on October 4th, more than a week after the shooting that killed Melanie Crow and injured other church members. Sampson was talking to his former girlfriend, Maya Hill, who also testified yesterday. Despite Sampson saying he doesn't remember much, prosecutors in their closing argument says that alone is not a defense, citing the phone calls. It was hard to understand the phone calls since he was speaking so quickly. The defense says that was a sign of a manic person who wasn't on his medication. Sampson used to be involved with the church, so hearing calls that mocked him, Minister Joey Spann says it didn't faze him.
I hated sending the Emmanuel I knew to jail, but I don't have a problem with this. He's not the same guy. You know, and he mentioned earlier about he knew how to fake it out, you know, and so yeah, the tapes didn't hurt me or anger me a whole lot. But it showed who he was and really who she was.
The jury instructed the jury that the phone calls are evidence about their credibility, not about his guilt. Now, the jury also heard from the defense today with their closing arguments. More on that part, we now have News Channel 5's Jason Lamb. Jason?
That's right, Matthew, and the victims and their family members in court today were visibly crying as the defense attorney offered up their closing argument that the reason that Sampson opened fire at the church was in part due to his mental illnesses.
Mr. Emmanuel Sampson had been growing sicker and sicker in the time leading up to that day. You heard his father and his girlfriend testify that he had become sadder and sadder, more and more depressed. They had observed him talking about suicide. They were concerned about him. And Mr. Sampson even said...
Sampson's attorney, Jennifer Thompson, also suggested that Sampson wasn't trying to exact revenge for the Charleston church shooting when he shot and injured churchgoers in 2017. He told the jury if he was, quote, wouldn't he have at least turned around and finished those people off? Sampson's attorney also suggested the reason the church pastor Joey Spann was shot was because he threw something at Sampson that startled him. Sampson's defense relies heavily on his mental state. Short of an insanity defense, Sampson's attorney says he has schizoaffective disorder and was manic, specifically mentioning how fast he was talking to his girlfriend on those controversial telephone calls.
If you listen to Mr. Sampson's voice on those telephone calls, listen to his speech. It is so rapid, so pressured, that speech. He's just talking. The calls are not sped up. They're not fast. He's just talking very, very rapidly. It clearly sounds like someone who's manic.
And again, after more than an hour of deliberations this afternoon, the jury will be back again tomorrow to continue. Live in Nashville tonight, Jason Lamb, News Channel 5.